could just be really lively in the middle of the night. Hello, everybody. We are in Australia. We are not in different countries. That was what we were just actually referring to. But anyway, welcome to this LinkedIn Live, where myself, Hannah Maude from Fire and Forte, have got the absolute privilege of speaking to Julie Fedele, who is someone whose name keeps cropping up in conversation. So, Julie, thank you so much for giving us this time this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And you've got better lighting than me, because I won't go on about the light, but we've got some light issues. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Just to introduce myself and the purpose of these LinkedIn Lives, my name's Hannah and I set up Fire and Forte about 2 or 3 years ago. I am on a mission to get the workforce AI ready. My own journey into AI is that my background was business, not technical, but I began to learn AI and then began to get a bit frustrated with how much the courses were all very theoretical. As someone who wanted to demonstrate results through AI, help my team deliver results, I knew that training needed to be really practical and really results focused, and much more inspirational. No offense. Hopefully there are some other inspiring courses out there. So I now run events, programs, and transformation programs with individuals and organizations. I truly believe the AI age is an opportunity to do things better than we've done them before. So it's a big opportunity to reset. So we'll cover more about that later, but I'm very lucky to have people in my orbit who are on a similar mission, and one of those people is Julie, and I will just say it was actually a friend in the UK who sent me your profile, saying, have you found this lady? Have you seen this lady? You need to follow her. So it's funny how we both live in Australia, but it came that way round, and then your name just seemed to pop up everywhere, to be honest. So Julie, would you be able to introduce yourself for anyone that doesn't know you, who might be on the call?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much for the invitation, Hannah. And that's so wild about the UK connection. As you know, I lived there for nearly 8 years. I loved it. And this is where actually my whole journey into portfolio careers began. So just a little bit about me. You can call me Jules. My mother calls me Julie, and it's when I'm in trouble. So call me Jules. Okay. And so my background is really, I spent, close to 20 years in the corporate and startup world. When I was in the UK, I primarily worked in private equity across portfolio companies. And during that time, I was just personally noticing, the redundancy cycles of, people in, safe jobs getting made redundant every 6 to 18 months. And I really started to notice this trend. And equally, I started to notice in myself, like I no longer wanted to climb that corporate ladder. I had made it to the C-suite in one of the portfolio companies I was working for. And I realized in myself, I wanted to create a lattice of opportunities instead. And this is where this concept of portfolio career, which all that means is monetizing one's skill set across multiple income streams, came into my orbit. And I started nurturing this idea of like, how might I step into a portfolio career where I'm not reliant on one source of income, one company, one boss, but rather more as someone who's owning my portfolio of work across multiple income streams. And that really took root in 2020. And I slowly stepped into my portfolio career over the next 4 years. So from 2020 to 2024, I took it slow. And then I resigned from my C-suite role last February and have been full-time in a portfolio career. And now what I do, I have a company called the Portfolio Career Club. And essentially my mission is to support people to move from corporate transition into their own portfolio careers. So if you have 10 plus years experience, how do you successfully monetize your skill set, have a fantastic set of income coming in, as well as have this beautiful work life, I don't really say work-life balance, but work portfolio that matches with your life. And so that's what I do now.
Incredible. Congratulations on making such a big move and potentially forging the way for something that many people will need to follow in the future. Can you just explain that again? You described that really eloquently. So it's monetizing your skill set in a way that works for you. Is that how you would describe portfolio careers?
Yes. So in terms of how I look at, so portfolio careers, just for everyone who's listening in, it's not a new concept. So there was a book written about it back in the 70s about how you can live this portfolio life by Charles Handy. And he was one of the leaders in this space. And essentially what it used to be allocated to people who were much later in their career, right? So they are at the end of their career, but they didn't want to retire. They wanted to semi-retire. So they were looking at how might they start stepping into doing a different type of work, like board roles or consulting or advising or mentoring, that they could then monetize instead of having this one big job. So that's the type of the genesis of the whole concept. But as we're moving into this new world of work, which we'll talk about, and the trends that are coming through, a lot of people are realizing that the social contract between employee and employer is changing. The safety net of having this, role for 20 or 30 years is also changing. So the whole concept of like, well, how would I use my skills that I've obtained over the years of my corporate life or whatever you've been doing, if that it could be in freelance, etc. How do I create a portfolio of work where I'm getting income at different points in time through different type of work versus just having one paycheck that is the same every month?
Brilliant. Yes, it's excellent. It's the interesting how it started in retirement and now it's at this stage of life, how it's now maybe being repurposed. And you referenced about how work is changing and how it is predicted to change. So if we zoom out and look at the predictions around the future of work and also how some of these big influences around things like AI, etc., are predicted to shape the way in which we work.
Yeah, so there's three things I generally look at when I think about the future of work and where it's heading. And I always talk about one statistics that really hit me over the head when I read it. And you probably know about this, but the OECD predicts that by 2030, over 50% of people will have portfolio-shaped careers. And so what we're witnessing now is that clunky transition. And one of the reasons is a technological change, the change in structure over how organizations are going to look and feel in the future, and the increasing of strategic role outsourcing. So what that means is instead of having a full-time equivalence in organizations, organizations and companies are moving to more of a flexible workforce that is more project-based. So it's a shift from permanent FTE to more like domain experts hired for specific projects.
And is that happening now, or is this predicted to, is it already happening? So, it's already happening. It's crazy to think we are 5 years away from 2030. I mean, I actually think that this is a window of time, not that predictions always come true, but maybe this indicates the fact that things could change quite quickly in the next 5 years. And so maybe now is the time to act. So these trends expected to shape the future, you're seeing these predictions in part coming true now?
Yes. So, I mean, I have to say the acceleration, everyone talks about the AI acceleration, but it really has kicked up a beat in the last 12 months. That's my experience. So when I was still in my previous role, I was the Chief Product and Marketing Officer for a climate tech startup. And a part of our mandate was to have flexible workforce because it was just better from a burn rate perspective. We didn't have so much FTE internally. And that was, 12 to 18 months ago. What I'm seeing now from an AI perspective is that a lot more organizations are doing, it's actually 25% of organizations, if they're not already, they're looking to strategically outsource roles, not replace the FTE. And this is what you're seeing a lot of people, redundancies in the market are happening now every 6 to 18 months, where just 3 to 4 years ago, the average redundancy cycles on average were 3 to 4 years. And now we've just seen that turn from years to months. And there's also all of this talk about the death of the linear career path. And we saw Reid Hoffman post this. It was quite controversial. I'm not sure if you saw it, but it was last year sometime. He predicted that by 2034, the 9 to 5 office job will be extinct, and that people will have 2 to 3 gigs versus a full-time job. Essentially, what he was describing was a portfolio career.
Gives us an extra 4 years, Jules,
I know.
over the 2030 prediction. So that's fascinating. So I hadn't seen that. And Reid Hoffman, one of the founders of LinkedIn and a big voice in AI and the future of work, across all of that data and the perspective that he's got, that makes gives it a lot of credibility, doesn't it? And that ties into what you've seen from a real life organizational point of view, around 25% having people that you could pull in and pull out dependent on demand or requirement. Is that correct?
And it's really interesting to see how I was leading the teams with the flexible workforce, and honestly, it was, you become really crystal clear as someone who's working within the organization. What do I actually need? How long do I need this person to be around? And I mean, the whole experience of onboarding and what does that look like from an organizational perspective, it's completely reimagined how you manage a workforce. And I thought we were kind of leading the way back then. I thought, wow, this is really interesting. What an exciting case study for the rest of the portfolio companies we could share. But quite quickly, I'm seeing this become quite normal now. Like, we're just seeing this is the way people are operating. And we're seeing a lot of this in the US as well.
Interesting. So sticking to some of the drivers, I'm keen to understand that. I think because, to your point around AI acceleration, there's a perception of AI acceleration, or potentially an expectation that it's going to deliver a lot of things. Is that a driver of these redundancies, or is it the economy? Have you got an opinion on what's driving those?
I mean, I have an opinion given the data and things that I read. Whether that is fact, like, that's all up for question, right? And so there's a couple of things happening. What we do know in the US, the 7 largest companies, or all technical driven, so tech companies, have spent in the last 12 months more on AI development than the total consumer spending of the US in the last 12 months. Like, can you fathom how much money that is being invested into AI? And so what we're seeing is like a real drive of how AI can, I mean, I don't want to say replace humans, but what does that look like for an organization? Do we need 500 people in an organization, or do we need 50? And then do we need 50? That's all right. Do we need only 50 people in the organization? And then, the rest is like this augmented team structure. And I mean, there's this quote going around that AI won't replace humans, but humans using AI will replace humans not using AI. Right? Like, that whole concept. And I mean, I'm not here to be a fear mongering, but my point is, we need to be really clear on, this is happening. How do we work with it? What does it mean for us? And how do we access the opportunity from an individual perspective to be able to play in this new way?
Excellent point. Excellent point. I really do agree with the importance of being eyes wide open about this.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you're putting essentially you could call it agency and initiative on the individual, because otherwise it feels as though change is happening to us and we've got no say in this. Whereas what you're talking about with the portfolio career, with the utilization of your own skills, is almost saying, I can see what's happening. Yeah. I'm now going to reorganize my skills and respond to it. I just want to comment a bit more on that point, actually, about the future of work, and you won't be replaced. I think there's some dangerous narratives around, because we want things to be so nice and we don't want to upset people and we don't want to create fear. And I know there's lots of conversations, lots of panels that I go to, and people say, you won't be replaced. This is about augmentation. But maybe that's in the medium to short term. You know, there is a reality about actually strategically positioning yourself, because actually when we look at 10 years, you and I have both done an incredible amount of research in this area. There's no point us necessarily sugarcoating it when our mission is to help people, right? And I think it's great that we can have that honest conversation, and that you're also demonstrating here's a pathway that you can take in the short to medium term. It feels uncomfortable to say this, to be honest.
It does,
isn't it?
And I don't want to, and I think I start a lot of, like, when I'm talking about this, I always preface it like, I'm not trying to be negative, I'm not trying to be doomsday, but I'm a realist at heart, right? And I do believe that we have our own agency in transition. And what we are seeing, like, if I think about the purpose or the outcomes that an organization wants to achieve, like, I've been in the board meetings, right? It's shareholder value if you're a listed company, and it's about returns. And so if I'm an organization, I'm going to be thinking about how I incorporate AI to, streamline some of my processes and get me the best outcome. So as an employee, I want to empower people to think, if that's the frame of reference, will you be retrained in AI? Are you going to be retrained in this new way of working? Or what does that look like? Organizations will retrain the people they need to keep. That is their mandate, right? I know that sounds harsh. It's true. I've been there before, right? But they won't retrain you if they don't need to. So it's up to us to figure out what's our USP, like what's our unique service proposition? How do we play with this type of technology? And then how do we strategically position ourselves in the market?
Brilliant. Very empowering. And I suppose if a leader of an organization was hearing this, you might also look at that the other way and say, actually, I don't want to lose the good people who do have a lot of corporate knowledge, who then, and I know this is to some extent, this takes a lot of cross-functional working internally and a long-term strategic view. But to actually say, who do we not want to lose, who we can upskill? Because I think there's a risk of people, of organizations saying, we'll just hire talent that's already got the skills. Well, they haven't got the corporate knowledge. And I just don't think you can realize all of the benefits without that corporate knowledge.
No.
Yeah. So thanks for giving us that insight, because from everything that you've said there, you've talked about the redundancies that are increasing, the investment that's happening in AI, which basically leans to the fact that AI will win. It won't just be a flash in the pan that will go away. When there's an intention there, that there's a lot of hope in this technology and there's a lot of investment. So that will therefore continue to impact on workers. And although AI might augment us at first, we then need to think about how that might look. And I think it's really a great quote, the Reid Hoffman one around, so by 2034, 9 to 5 will be gone, and people will in majority be working across 2 to 3 projects almost. Was that correct? Is that what you said? Yeah. Wow. So this is a big deal. Okay. So what do organizations need to do? If you're working in HR, for example, or if you are in an organization, what does it mean to you as a people leader, for example?
Yeah, I think about this a lot, actually, because being in an organization for so long and working with, HR, building a team, it's quite a complex move, right? And if I think about from an organizational perspective, what used to be really easy is the reason why the 9 to 5 is so prevalent, and the reason why it's easy to hire a full-time person is because, set and forget. I've got this person for 40 hours a week. They do this type of job. Easy, right? The hard part is getting the right person in the door, and then some onboarding, and then it's set and forget type thing. But now I believe, and I've written about this before, a colleague and I have been talking about this whole thesis a lot around the corporate model is moving towards a Hollywood model. And so I just want to explain what that thesis is, and then I'll have a few points in terms of what I've seen from an internal organization perspective, some of the changes I think they're going to have to make. So in terms of the Hollywood model, if you think about Hollywood, as a construct and how they create movies is there's a producer, a super producer who comes in, brings in the director, brings in the talent, brings in the cinematographer, brings in the hair and makeup, scouts a location, right? And so it is project-based, highly skilled team brought together for a specific project. Then after that project is done, it's disbanded. And this is the way I believe corporate is going to move into in terms of how the operative rhythm of corporate. So I think if we used to have, remember, in the organizations I've worked in, there was like this head of talent program and we would do succession planning and there was this whole huge process. I actually think we're going to have to rethink talent strategy in organizations. So if the hypothesis is that organizations are going to shrink in terms of like FTE equivalents, right? Like how many people, if they go from 500 to 50, then if you're going to scout talent, it's not going to be from within like it used to be. It's going to be externally. So we're moving from hiring employees to accessing expertise. And you do this through building networks of specialists rather than trying to house all of the skills internally. So I'm seeing the HR function move to this hybrid model. So you have a core team plus specialists working on specific projects. And then you'll have this really robust alumni network where you maintain relationships were based off who you've worked with in the past, and then you can go and, access that talent when needed. And so I think that's a part of like us really rethinking how we access talent.
Wow. So from a people leader perspective, you almost need to open up your number of people on the books, but they wouldn't be on the potentially, because you'll actually need because I suppose if one specialist isn't available, you want someone else, and you want to maybe curate, do you, the best specialists in your industry?
And it can be specialist and generalist, right? I'm a T-shaped individual, that whole theory of T-shaped. I mean, I have a depth of expertise in business building and venture, like that would be my expertise, but I can work functionally across the organization. So I actually think from a people leader perspective, it's more about we have to reimagine the infrastructure for distributed expertise and how we work. So we will need systems that support people leaders to have project-based collaborations rather than full-time employment. Like, how do we get the job done if we're working towards more of this flexible type of working? So when, a people leader in the past would have had 10 people in their team. How about they have 3 and then there's 7 flexible workers? Like, how do you work with that? You'll need clear frameworks for evaluating and onboarding different types of professionals. So that whole onboarding process is going to be completely reimagined. Different compensation models to reward value delivery, not just time spent. Like, how does all of that work? And then we could talk about culture, because I think about how do you then cultivate a culture of an organization? Like, what does that mean? So that's a whole other part we can talk about as well.
I mean, there's so many sparks thinking about the amount of transformation that's required of the whole HR function as well as people leaders in the organization. So a people leader becomes a project manager and an expert in, they've always of pulling in the right talent, even if in their department or function or on their project. And the role of HR changes dramatically. Like, as you talk about the frameworks, what kind of person do we hire into this organization? What do the budgets look like? How do you rip up the budget between full-time? Because it's hard. The thing is, Jules, here is one thing that is maybe that is a little bit of an elephant in the room. We are struggling now to help women, especially, work around children, work with, I'm hearing a lot of people like, it's 5 days or not. I don't know if you've heard this as well. Yes, and when has that been okay? I mean, I think it's terrible that how hard people are having to fight just to be able to say, no, you still pay me for 3 or 4 days. You don't pay me for full time, but I've got a child. So working part time. if companies are struggling to manage their workforce just for those who need to take part-time work for that reason, how do you think they're going to adapt to this radical transformation around portfolio, well, the new way of working?
Well, this might be like really unpopular, but I just think they need to rip up their frame of reference that they currently have. So the reason why it's such a struggle is because they're trying to fit people into the existing structure. How about the existing structure no longer holds? What does it then look like? Because the reason why I have my mission in the Portfolio Career Club is to predominantly support women to work with, financial freedom, flexibility, and have this ability to do work that lights them up versus being stuck into roles that aren't reskilling them at all, right? The worst thing you can do in this age is have the same year over and over again because you're not upskilling, right? And so what I'm hearing, particularly, I will say, like I've lived in Europe and I've worked across all over Europe, and their models of managing talent, I would say, are better than what I'm seeing currently in Australia. So I am seeing a really we need you for 5 days. And I understand why they like organizations are saying that, because it's really hard to manage people. It's a whole different frame of reference. It's a whole different way of communicating. You have to be absolutely, completely stellar at your communication. Your async communication has to be spot on. And necessarily traditional corporates aren't set up for that. However, if you want to get AI optimization, where AI is doing the things that are, rinse and repeat, and you want to have highly skilled individuals, you are going to have to rethink from a completely new baseline. Like you have to redo it.
Yeah, and it's going to bite you at some point. Change will happen to you unless you lead the change in your organization. Yes. Okay.
And so I really think leaders are going to go from managing people to really genuinely orchestrating outcomes. Right? And how those people operate within delivering that outcome is going to be varied. It's going to be completely different. And it's going to be painful for the managers who are used to having, I have access to you 40 hours a week, 60 hours a week. And when I email you at 9 p.m., I know that by 9 a.m. I'll have an answer. Well, actually, in the new world of work, if you're managing 2 to 3 gigs, and you've been hired for this specific project to do X, Y, and Z, you need to be a lot more, it requires a whole different skill set as a leader to manage and orchestrate that outcome. And I just think it's, you know what I mean? I think it's going to be a bit painful, and I'm going to be really unpopular. People are going to hate me. But I don't see it working any other way, if I'm being honest.
I think you're speaking. I think you're giving everyone a heads up, and this is an opportunity to think differently. So let's put the different hats on. Okay, you work in HR. You can see that things are struggling at the moment. You're going through rounds and rounds of redundancies. I'm hearing that just so often. Restructures. You're thinking about talent. You know that change is coming. You know that you're suddenly needing to put more AI skills onto job descriptions, and yet a lot of people don't yet have those. So what are you asking for these people coming through the door? How much of a superhuman do you need? Actually, we just need this AI skill, but we need this kind of strategic thinker. So maybe you're already, while you're recruiting, for example, or today, what you need to be thinking about and what you're agitating for is to begin thinking now. What if there was a different way to recruit for this project or for this role or for this head? I think that it's so beautifully put, the point around, rather than managing people, let's face it, that's really hard, to orchestrating outcomes. And when I think about the world of AI agents as well thrown into this, and that very much is an orchestration as well of, it's not, they don't have that common sense to go and do that thing if you don't tell them to do it. So you've actually got to be very clear in your instructions, and very deliberate. It's not, like you say, the message that you just get late at night. It's much more around what's the next week look like, the next milestone in this project, etc.
Yeah.
So as a people leader, it's thinking, how is my communication? How organized am I? How much do I understand the deliverables? Because we've all just been, because everyone's a bit burnt out, I think, at the moment. And I think that is because they're trying to work in the way that they have been working while things have changed. So Monday reports and, but everything's kind of, but headcount is reducing. But then you think about, let's put the hat on as an individual.
Yeah.
If you're giving this heads up here around how do you need to show up? How much do you need to own your strengths? How strong do your boundaries need to be around, I am known for this, and I'm actually going to try and not be a please everyone or do everything, but I want a good reputation amongst the people that the different organizations that include me on their portfolio of people that they hire. So then you actually need a strong brand, a strong reputation. Have you got that now?
Yeah, so there's a few things that I always, because I play in the individual, like that's what I do. So I support the corporate transitioner. So I think about this a lot, and there's 4 things I tell people or advise them. And I guess the first thing I'll say is, we're all like in this process of transitioning from, I used to work really hard at the beginning of the process when I was going for a job. Like I would get my CV ready. I'd make sure that my front of house looked fantastic. I had my best foot forward for a few months when I was going through the interview process. And then I could then relax into my job and I'd stay there for 5 years, right? And so I did all this work up front. But actually, as we move into this more flexible, multiple project way of working, we need to have these skills like continuously running, right? It's not just I get this and then I chill. It's like, well, what do I need? So the first thing I talk to people about is, what is your cutting edge skill set and how do you develop it if you don't have it? So number one, corporate is, and I pick on corporate, I stayed there for 20 years. So, I feel like I can say this, but we never want to have the same year over and over. So I had a fantastic mentor say to me when I was 27, and he said, Julie, the last thing you want to do is stay in a role and you can say, I've been there for 5 years, but I only learnt for 1 year. That's the worst thing you can do. And so for me, it's, in this time, you need to actively upskill in areas that complement yourself and how you can work with AI. So we really have to figure out, like, how do we work with AI, and how can I work with it? What do I bring to the table? I talk about developing your T-shaped expertise. So develop one area you're really great in and then have broad complementary skills. And we want to focus on your humanness. I talk about focus on human skills, strategic thinking, relationship building, creative problem solving, right? What does that actually mean? So I work with a client now, and we talk about, she's this incredible conversational designer. I said, in the world of AI, it's not just plain communications, it's conversational design for AI, for how you program the robot. It's also conversational design of how you communicate throughout the organization. That is uniquely human. Beautiful. Let's anchor onto that. So that's one thing I talk about, getting really crystal clear. The second thing I'm really passionate about is, because of this, my hypothesis about moving to this Hollywood model, we need to, as individuals, put ourselves in exceptionally curated networks. So we need to build our networks. So high value work, it will increasingly come from those personal networks, not job boards. We've already seen it. How many people have told you, I applied for this job, I got nothing? Then that you can see on LinkedIn, 400 applications. Who's getting a look in that, right? So we really need to curate our network, build genuine relationships, not transactional networking, and your network will become your business development engine. So like I said, if the talent managers are moving from inside to outside the organization, they're going to go and infiltrate these different networks where they know expertise lives. How do you position yourself in those? So that's the second thing. I have 4 things. I promise I'll shut up in a second. The third thing is integrity-based personal brand building. I know everyone hates personal brand, like, oh, vomit. I just don't want to hear about personal brand anymore. Sorry, it is incredibly important. I mentor and coach executives who have zero personal brand and have realized, oh my gosh, I need some strategic presence. So companies can no longer define you. What we're moving toward, if the average tenure now of a CEO is 2 years, how do they position themselves for the next role? Like, everyone's thinking about this. How you do this is defining your personal brand and positioning yourself online. This means like sharing your unique perspective publicly and building reputational capital, right? I'm not telling you to post on LinkedIn every day about B2B SaaS sales, like that meme that everyone's like posting every day on LinkedIn. I'm not telling you that. But what I am saying is get extremely clear to strategically position yourself where your expertise lives. So if I am a portfolio careerist, right, and that's what I'm supporting people to do, my people thinking about their career is hanging out on LinkedIn. How do I strategically position themselves in my mind and deliver value? So that's a third thing. And the fourth thing I say is, we're in this time, like we've spoken about some of the potential or perceived negatives, but on a positive light, we're in a point of time that we can have life first career design. That's the way I structure it. So we can get really clear on how we want each day to feel, how much we want to earn, how much we want to work. We can use tools like, you can use human design. I use this tool called Human Design. You can use Myers-Briggs to really understand yourself, and DISC to understand what your patterns of working are, and design your career. Like, that is all within our gift. So they're the 4 biggest things I would say as an individual we need to start thinking about now.
Super. And a superb list. I'm sure it was 8, but okay, it was 4.
Sorry, I was like, and then yes.
A few subheadings. The common thread between them, if I let me know if you think this is correct, is the uniqueness of the person, the unique skills that they lean into. Because actually one person's personal brand doesn't need to be like the next person's. And when you talk about T-shape, well, your area of in-depth expertise will be different to the next person's. So I guess is the starting spot finding what you can really own from the people that you work with? Do they already know that, or do you need to guide them?
Yeah, it's some people, it depends on where people are. If they're aspiring portfolio careers, so that is they're still in their corporate lives but looking to transition. Believe it or not, like, corporate can dampen, right, some of your zone of genius, only because you're asked to sit in meetings, right? So for me, my problem was I didn't realize how much I love building businesses, because 80% of my time was doing stakeholder management or, strategic stakeholding. And I didn't enjoy that. I wanted to build the business, right? And until I stepped out, I was like, this is my skills, but I needed some support to understand that. So the first step is, if you're still within corporate, is really thinking about, like, where do I get the most lit up? Like, why did I get into the role I got into initially? So life leaves you breadcrumbs, and it gives you moments of expansion where you feel like, oh, I love doing this, right? And so I encourage people who are a little confused, like, find those glimmers. What are they? Why did you first say you wanted? So for me, I wanted to be in strategy, and I'm like, why did I want to actually be in strategy? Because I love the vision and building something. And so that's where I started. Other people come to me and say, hey, Jules, I have these 3 or 4 skills that I really want to nurture and dive into deeper. I really want to position myself as an expert. But that is few and far between. I would say I have more people come into my world who are like, I've been working for 20 years and I have no skills. And I'm like,
yeah, and you've always got skills, you've just probably been, I think there's a lot of maybe people losing their confidence at a certain stage in their career, or because things appear to have moved on so quickly.
Yeah. And I would say the first thing I would encourage everyone to do is become an experimenter, because what you think you want to do versus what you end up doing are 2 very different things. So in the first few years, the reason why I encourage people to start doing this now is because you might think, oh, I'm just going to go into consulting. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I hate consulting. So I encourage you to experiment, play, and go in with a growth mindset, because whatever you step into is not what you're going to step out as. It's ever evolving.
Yeah, excellent. I remember a previous mentor saying to me, when were you happiest in your career? And no one had ever asked me that. And then I just had this maybe rose-tinted spectacle moment of my second marketing job and the team and the creativity. And it was just a few memories of the certain projects that we worked on that. And I now ask that of other people as well, to say, that is your breadcrumb, like you say. Yeah. If you could reshape your own career, how could you deepen that? How could you do more of that thing? And I'm going to link it back to the AI skills part of point 1 as well, because you talk about your cutting edge toolkit. Is that correct? Or your cutting edge skill set?
Yeah, your cutting edge skill set. Yeah.
It's a great term. And I think everyone, there's a bit of work to do to like build your confidence, to realize what you're really good at. You know, like you say, experiment, get your feedback, realize what you've been good at before. Use AI to get even sharper at those things. Use AI to help you experiment in these topics. I had a great conversation the other day where someone said, I've never done marketing, but I'm really keen to get into marketing principles. And we went through some AI exercises that could then both educate on marketing principles, but also learn AI in a way that would gather lots of information about the best brands out there and brand building. Yeah. So would those kind of exercises work with your point 1 around activate AI skills? Yeah.
Yeah. So within a part of what we do within within my work within the Portfolio Career Club, similar to what you just mentioned, is there's a whole module around performance. So if we are moving to smaller teams or solopreneurship, and that's essentially what a portfolio careerist is, then how do we become have a team of 5, but we only have 1 human working? So how do we use AI to support us with copywriting, to support us create GPTs that know us so well that when we need to pitch something, it's like, I can do that within 30 seconds. And a part of that is feeling, so I have so many, it's so interesting. I have a lot of women say to me, I feel like I'm cheating. And I find that a really interesting frame of reference, because initially when I was using AI with some of my newsletters to make it sound better, so the way I use AI is I write everything first, and then I support it for me to clean up and to make sure I have the right connection between paragraphs. And when it would result in better wording, I thought, is this cheating? Am I not smart enough? But I mean, I got completely over that really quickly, because I just thought, now I have the capacity to support over 35 women at the one time. And you know what? 18 months ago, there was no way. There's no way. My newsletter takes me, 8 hours to produce. Now I've more than half that time, because I have such a way of working with AI to support me. It's my work. It just supports me to get there faster. And overcoming that boundary or that barrier is incredibly important. It's all about understanding, well, how do you supercharge your performance? And how does AI help you do that?
Yeah, powerful point, really powerful takeaway. You're not cheating, you're amplifying what you're good at. You will soon be able to tell the people that are cheating, because they're just saying, write me a post about this, or do me a marketing plan about this, or create some images that blah, blah, blah. And then you have an inauthentic brand or business or bit of communication, which no one can actually back up. I think cheaters, people who use it lazily, it'll be really obvious.
It will. And that all comes back to your integrity-based personal brand, right? So I think, again, when we've spoken about this, the future belongs to people who can really have their humanness intact, right? So personal brands are exactly that. I'm going to trust Hannah. I've seen Hannah. I know it's not an AI twin. I can see the way she speaks to me. I relate to her content, and she shows up online in a similar fashion. So I know it's Hannah, right? You can really tell when you speak to someone and then they're producing something online. You're like, AI produced that for me. And I said, no, this is rubbish. You know, people are really going to be quickly figure out like you are not trustworthy. Like people are going to make those judgment calls. And so I think it's really important to, that's great. We can lean into our humanness. It's innately ours. Like let's put our hands around that. I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, fantastic. And that subconscious thing where people are like, nah, that's AI, tick, that's becoming subconscious actually as well. Yeah. So I'm going to end with maybe not the question that you'd think I would. Sorry about this, but I can't help but think that there is a security and there is a dangerous short-term comfort and security with staying in one position at the moment, whether it's in corporate or staying in a job because things are changing. And we had quite an honest conversation about that earlier. But at the same time, it's a big leap to, even though you know things might change, it's a big leap to go on your own. How long does it take to start making income? What kind of preparation should someone make? And how different is that path to navigate around commercializing your skill set, if you like, and not having all of those trusted functions around you that you've been used to if you've come from a corporate background?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And it's as well, it's not a linear, there's not a linear answer. So if you're still in corporate and you're thinking about like, I need to really get my house in order because I know this is coming. My advice is if you're still in corporate, 12 months leading up to, or even longer. So I took 4 years. I was experimenting for 4 years before I felt confident enough to leave. That's me. I took a decision to use my core income, which was my corporate job, as the primary investor into my new skill set development. And so anyone thinking about this now, I would like encourage you to rethink about how you invest in yourself. It's not that I'm spending money or I'm wasting money. It's like, well, how can I invest in myself for the future? So if I have capacity, like if I'm spending $5,000 a year on, I have that as disposable income, how can I refunnel that as investing into myself for my future? Like you were going back to school, like I would say, how can you really think about what types of skills do you need to develop and where your gaps are? So I'd start thinking about that right now. I'd also start, I mean, I know this is so cliche, but it is really true. I'd start jumping in with experimenting of how you can strategically show up, right? And so what that doesn't mean you have to like post every day on LinkedIn, but get more confident and comfortable about talking about what you do and how you do it. It's really different to curate a perfect post over 60 minutes, rather, making sure it's perfect and then you post it, versus being able to talk to someone when they say, like, let me know a little bit about yourself. Like, practice your pitch. Practice saying, without hiding behind the brand you're currently working for, what is your brand? Like, how do you pitch that? How does it feel in your body? Because let me tell you, the first time you say it, you're going to want to squirm because it just doesn't feel natural. And us corporate professionals are used to saying, I work for X and in that organization, I do Y. What about if that goes away? What's your pitch then? So I really encourage people to practice that and start positioning yourselves in places and spaces where you know opportunities are going to be in the future. And you may not get it right? It's going to feel uncomfortable, but just think of it as micro experimentation that's leading you toward something closer and your vision versus just putting your head in the sand. So that would be my advice for people who are still in corporate and thinking, I want to exit this in the 12 to 2 month mark, 12 to 2 year mark.
Yeah, excellent. All of those experiments and practicing. And the fact that if it feels awkward, that doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It means that you're doing something right because you've done things in a certain way. And I know personally the companies that I've worked for before, because you and I have taken, well, I would say I think I'm in a portfolio career now.
Yes, you are.
And that's still relatively new, but the way that you can look at all of the companies that you've worked with, or if I was still in that role, I want to work with them again, just in a different capacity. So I suppose it's not thinking I'm leaving you and this will be the end of this. It's more thinking, well, how would I interact with them if these were my clients, as opposed to full-time yeah, they paid my salary, and I think that does change it. I think you do actually show up every single day, don't you, and make sure your best foot forward every day. You know, there isn't kind of a quiet Monday. I think really you've got to think in that way.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I also think that I've heard before when we talk about portfolio careers, people think, oh, well, I'm either in a full-time capacity, monetizing my skill set, or I'm in a corporate job. I'm like, no, actually, think more expansively. You could still, because you're figuring things out, you could still want to work reduced hours in a corporate capacity. So you might take that job just because we want to also calm our nervous system. You know, for those of us who have mortgages, we have bills to pay, children, etc. We don't want to like shock our nervous system and go from X amount coming in to like nothing. So it's not failure if you're figuring out like, oh, I might dabble in this type of role, even though it's on a part-time basis, not giving me as much money, while I then go and look at how I can cultivate this income stream in my free time or when I'm not working for that job. Like all of that is accessible to us, but our society is really in this, you know, we've been taught you either do this or you do this. Like my advice is everything is gray now. Like step into the gray. There's no black and white. It's all up for grabs.
Yeah, brilliant. And dare to reimagine your future based on that, based on the fact that those barriers have come down. Thank you for such an incredible conversation. This is the kind of conversation I think that we all need to be having, ideally with you, but also like with our friends and with our colleagues to kind of say, how are we best going to adapt to the future of work? And this has created an incredible vision and almost a blueprint to how we can do that. So thank you so much. Happy birthday for Thursday. And yeah, thank you to everyone who's listening or has watched this. Maybe you saw the interruption. That was a funny little moment. Now, please do follow Julie on LinkedIn. She creates brilliant content also on Instagram as well. Actually on TikTok as well. Love all of your... Maybe that's your experimentation platform. Do follow Julie. And I've got some events coming up here in Sydney on the 17th of September, which is a fantastic opportunity to accelerate your skills for the future, including AI skills, data skills, and the behaviors that we need to adapt. And also on the 16th of October in London as well, with an all-day accelerator program. So please do follow Fire and Forte, and hopefully you might meet Julie at one of my at one of my events in the future as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Hannah.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye.